Okay, and we're back. It's COMP397. It's winter 2016, and it's week 2, lesson 2, part 2 of our broadcast. I will eventually give up the better files, the recordings, which are much clearer than the broadcast, because when we do a broadcast with the web, there's a bit of synchronization issues, some other things. It's not as clear. But I will upload everything. I've got a pile of stuff to upload this weekend. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so you have a problem. You forgot your laptop, right? Or your battery died. Or you know what? Your power cord, you lost it, right? Or the machine in front of you that you configured and you spent like 2 weeks configuring, someone reformatted it. And you know they've re-imaged it. So now it's all gone, right? What do? You forget it. You're like, I'm not going to do that again, is what you're going to do. And you're going to go to c9.io. Right, let's go to c9.io. Now, again, you have to sign up to Cloud9, and I'm going to go and take incognito mode so you can see incognito mode, right? So you can see what it would look like. Oops. So you can see what it looks like if you've never gone there before, because it knows me, so it knows who I am. So if I go to c9.io, it's an online IDE service that you can certainly subscribe to. I believe they give you two free spaces that you can certainly use, right? So workspaces is what we're talking about. Okay, this is cool, but I don't want to just have some free space. I got some different ones here. I want to. Where's that one I just used? I just used this one that is State Machine, right? So I want to get to my State Machine. If I give C9 or Cloud9 access to my GitHub, and if I click repositories, take a look. It'll give me a list of all my repositories on GitHub. Now I can filter them, and if I look at State Machine, with my State Machine, right? And if I click clone to edit, I start off with, it creates a virtual machine, Ubuntu server, right? And an IDE online that has npm, right? A version of TypeScript that you can use in the command line. Right? It's not, you won't be automatically transpiling. I wish it did. If it did that, I would use it all the time. I wouldn't even use of VS Code, seriously. Right? That's how good this thing is. Notice how these are all my files, and I'm ready to go, right? So, I mean, if I double click on one of these files, let's say, for example, my index.html, I can modify it like normal. And notice how down here, I have a full Ubuntu server, right? So I can have a little thing here. I can do all my Ubuntu commands right in here on my console. I can even run tests. I can do a preview or create a task runner to run a test right in here in my window. Right now, there's some really great documentation online for Cloud9, but everything is here. So let me show you this. So let's say, for example, I make a change in my document. So I want to go into my assets, my scripts, in my core. And in my game.ts, I want to make a change, right? Because we're going to talk about this stuff anyway. And if you want to, you can follow me right here, right now. Again, you can have a Chromebook with a browser and do a development, not a problem. I don't need any other tools. This is the only tool you need, right? It's a little bit more clunky. And in an emergency, I've done it before. I've kind of come in here and done it. Can it transpile all your files all at once? You got to set it up. You can create a task runner that does it all for you, right? But for now, in its original form, what I need to do is I got to go in here. So let's go into my game.ts. Here's my game.ts. Notice how I have access to it just like I normally would. And what I want to do is I want to make a change, right? So I can make a change here by adding something, or in my menu, right? So in my menu, which is in a state, here's my menu.ts. This is the one I really want to change. In my menu.ts, I want to change what I'm saying here. So instead of it saying game start, I want to say hello TypeScript. Right? So this is something new. So hello TypeScript. Yay! Right? That's a new thing, right? That's a new thing So I save it. I've saved it online here. And now what I want to do, which is really cool, is I want to push it to GitHub. Right? If I can push it locally with me, I should be able to do it here, right? Let's try that out. So I go to here, and I click clear, and I go git add dot, just like normal, and then git commit -m, and it knows my state of, it's the same state as GitHub. It's up to date. It's in sync already, right? Git commit -m, updated menu.ts, right? State. And then press enter. And then I'm going to say git push origin master. And when I do that, I'm going to go up to GitHub, push it up, and guess what's going to happen to online to my my Azure site, right? Because remember I have that Azure site, which is COMP397 state machine Azure websites.net. It's going to update in a second, right? And instead of saying git game start, right? If everything went well, when it updates, I'm just going to refresh here, right? It should say hello. What does it say? Hello thing, right? Well, what's happened? What's happened that it's not doing it? I know why, right? I didn't transpile, right? So I got to transpile my TypeScript. I change it here. I can upload the change, but it only uploaded my TS file, right? TS doesn't work in the browser. Only JS works in the browser, JavaScript, right? Not TypeScript. So what I need to do here is I need to transpile my my menu.ts. How do I do that, right? Well, I need to do it manually. So clear. And the way I can do it manually is like this. And this is where it gets a little hairy, right? I got to go, first of all, I list my structure. You can see that it's the same. I'm going to go into my scripts. And then in my scripts, I can see that I have states. Right here I am. And in my menu state, I want to use my TSC command. So I say TSC space menu.ts and press enter. If everything goes well, and mostly it does, it'll transpile, right? And now don't worry about this, doesn't understand scene and all this stuff. Because of the version of TypeScript, it may not understand. Oh, by the way, could I update TypeScript? Let's check that out. Can I do an npm install TypeScript? Can I do that? -G? Well, yes, I can. Right? I can go up online. I can download and install any version of TypeScript or any version of anything I want, just like normal, right? So I could do that. Now notice how it says TypeScript 1.75. The problem is I have to rework my Ubuntu server so that it points to the right version of TypeScript, just like before, because my version of TypeScript is their version, dot whatever it is, right? So I can do the same thing. It's still going to give me the same error if I do this, right? If I try and transpile, it doesn't understand where things are, and then it'll give me some warnings. That's what these things are, right? However, it'll still transpile. So if I want to look at my my menu.js by double-clicking, right? And if I scroll down to see if that's changed, let's just hope that's changed. Hello TypeScript is already there. It's already transpiled, right? Now that it's transpiled, right, whether it likes it or not, Mr. TypeScript, right? And by the way, I can go here and go clear. And you can do this on the command line too, by the way, without automatically transpiling. The only problem is it's manual, right? It's a little manual for you. It's even more manual than before, but everything else is here. So this is kind of the advantage. Okay. So now I can do the same thing. I can say git add, oops. I focused on the right place. Git add dot, right? I've added now git commit -m, another commit, updated, or transpiled for this transpiled, menu.ts, because I forgot to do that, right? And then I'll git push again, git push minus something called origin master, and then it'll go up, throw it up onto GitHub, and of course, because Azure is like watching my GitHub, right? Then if I go here, and eventually, it'll do it in a second, if I refresh, it should say hello TypeScript, right? Right from there. So I have access to doing that. Now, here's a problem. Am I up to date locally? No, right? Because my GitHub, if I go to github.com, right, and I look at my Centennial College, and if I look at my latest files, which is this one, notice how I have 4 commits, right? Here's my commits. I initial commit, I created my README, I updated my menu state just now. I transpiled my menu because I forgot to transpile. So I've got 4 commits here, but locally, here I am locally, and if I do a GitHub or git log, I have 2 commits, right? So I have my initial commit and my README. That's my log file for my commits. See you later, man. Thanks. So my initial commit and my README file, right? There it is. So I need to do what now to get up to date? How do I get up to date locally if I've done something like used Cloud9 or another service? It's like I'm working somewhere else, remote, what do I do? How do I make myself local up to date? Pull. It's easy, right? So I go git pull, and now it's going to go up to GitHub, and look how fast that was. And now I'm up to date. And if I do, I'm going to clear this. If I do a git log, notice how I have 4 updates now, exactly like I have on GitHub and exactly how I have here on Cloud9, right? So it's not difficult to work with multiple tools in order for you to work properly. If you're somehow you're not working properly, you're on an exam and you forgot your stuff, Cloud9, all right? Questions around Cloud9. Gives you 2 free workspaces at least to work with, right? And they're little Ubuntu VMs that you get, okay? That allows you to do everything. And by the way, if you're using mean stack stuff, if you're doing Node, so Mongo, Express, Angular, and Node in another class, perfectly acceptable way of doing it. You don't have to use a heavy-duty IDE like Visual Studio. Cloud9 is perfect. Okay, let me just get out of Cloud9. I don't need that right now because I'm going to continue using VS Code, right? And let's get back into it. So I'm up to date, as an example, and it's showing me over here. There's something that I forgot to save, right? So it's showing me this thing. How do I make sure that this job? I didn't make really any changes here. Well, let's just skip out of this just to make sure. I'm not going to save anything because I'm already up to date. I know that, right? Now remember, when you launch Visual Studio for the again after it's been quiet, if it's been closed, it's going to load up the last project that you worked. Okay, there's my last project. Here's my working files. I can have all of these or none of them. If I click the X on the working files, it'll just make them disappear. It doesn't mean that they're gone. I'm not erasing them. All I'm doing is I'm shutting them down so I don't see them inside my editor. That's all I'm doing. Okay. Okay, cool. So I've got my game.ts, and I want to explain it a little bit to you, right? Here's my game.ts. What I want to do to make it easily understandable is I want to comment everything out, all right? And I want to create a little Create.js application for us today, right? Without going full-on state machine. So you guys we're going to use this thing as a little template, right? So follow me here, and don't be afraid. I swear I won't mess it up, right? I just want you to comment out everything, right? So how do I comment out everything? Other than this, don't comment this out. That would be bad, right? Well, let's just comment all this out. So we're just going to do one of these. Just open up a comment, go all the way to the bottom, and put a closing, closing part of that comment, which is star / and then as a close. So / star / all this is commented out, and let's push it to the bottom. So we're not getting rid of it. It's going to be way on the bottom, so we can make some space for ourselves. There we go. Still there, not using it right now. Okay. Because I want to show you, we want to learn Create.js, right? I can't just make a code for you and everything's good. I want you to reference that code, right? But I want to use the code that's online, for example, so we can learn how to use this framework, right? Okay, cool. How do I do it? Well, let's go to our documentation, and I'm going to go to easel.js. If I search for easel.js, and if I go to click here, and I go to docs, right? Notice how I have this little example right here, right? I have a little example for my stage. I have a little example for other things I'm going to add in here. I can certainly look here to give me an idea of what to do, right? Now, I want you to think of it this way. Everything is going to be played inside of your canvas element, right? And we've already set up a canvas element inside of our file. So if I look at my index.html, let me just close all this stuff up because it's unnecessary for now. And if I look at my index.html, notice how I have a canvas element. Remember I told you that our game is going to live in here, okay? So I need to get a reference to my canvas element. How do I do that? Remember, does anyone remember how to do that with JavaScript, right? How do I make a reference to an element? I want to bind my element into a variable, right? Does anyone remember how to do that? That's the way. Document.getElement by this ID, by canvas, right? And I want to make a reference to it. Thank you, Sean. So how do I do that? I'm going to go back into my game.ts. Here it is. And let's do that. So the first thing I want to do in the global namespace is I want to make a variable, right? And my variable is going to be called canvas, right? And my canvas is going to be equal to document. We're going to fix this in a second in the TypeScript way. Document dot. Look at the code hinting I'm getting. I'm getting nice code hinting. Get element by ID, right? And then in quotations, I'm going to target my canvas element. That's the first thing, right? And if I hover over canvas, I get HTML element. And I want to be explicit here, even though it does it by type inference. So when I assign it, they know what it is. To give me additional code hinting, I want to type in HTML element. And notice it'll give me that. So what I'm saying here is my canvas variable is of type HTML element, and I'm with the assignment operator, the equal sign, I'm getting a reference document.getElementById, and I'm looking at the canvas of this canvas element. I'm making it's almost like a pointer. I'm pointing at that canvas element, and I'm making a reference to it in this canvas variable. Now that I have it, I can do stuff with it as if I can play with that canvas element. I have direct access to it in the DOM, document object model, right? Okay, cool. That's step one. Step two, I need to create, right, a variable for my stage, right? I have my canvas, but I'm going to create a virtual stage where I'm going to put my entire game. And it's going to be of type create.js. Okay, let's do that. So I'm going to say var, right? And we're going to say stage. And it's going to be of type, and follow me here, create.js. You should be able to get this type code hinting now, dot capital S for stage. All I want to do here, right? So I've created two variables. Those are my containers. One is a pointer to my actual element, right? Which is this canvas element that's in my document. And the second one is this container, a create.js container that I'm going to use to place my game. Okay? Now, in my index.html, we also called this init method. I don't have an init method right now. I've commented everything out, right? I got to put it in. And if we're starting a brand new file, this is what you do. You can make a function. Two ways to make a function, major ways to make a function in JavaScript. What are they? Who remembers? How about our girl who's part of my advanced graphics? I'm looking at you right now. And she's holding her face. She doesn't know. Tell me, what's the two ways? Come on, I've already told you a couple times now. You should be the expert in this class. Go, tell me. Why don't you come up here and teach? Let's go. She's embarrassed. I'm killing her. All right, I'll tell you. There's two ways that we primarily see functions written in JavaScript, and they're both different, right? The one way is like this, and if you do any mean stack stuff, you're going to see it mostly like this. Var, my function, right, as an example, is equal to a new anonymous function, right? That's how you normally would see it. And this anonymous function, you have some kind of commands. Like here's, enter your code here. Enter your code here. Whatever your code is going to be. This is ROM, by the way, right? That's one way. The other way we always see it is like this. Function, right? And then we make a name function, my function, right? And just quotation, just like curly braces like this. But why one way over the other? If you want performance, right, and it's a little bit more funky syntax, you go with way number one. All right, you want to go with the anonymous way. The anonymous method gives you an unnamed function, right? And from a performance perspective, it does improve performance a little bit. So I recommend that if you're using things like Node.js, even for here, you can do that too. For us, to make it clear, for us, I would recommend this way, right? So I would call my function init. So just call init my function, right? So now I have an init function. What does my function init return? Nothing, right? So I would return void. And anytime we would return anything in TypeScript, we can put it after the function declaration like this. Okay, return void. Okay, cool. So I return void. I need to create, I have my canvas element. This is cool. Here it is right here. Is it okay that I do this in the global namespace up here? Maybe. Not clean though, right? What I probably want to do, and just to kill this for a second, I probably want to do something like this. I want to declare it up here and then use it down here, right? That's probably the better way to do it inside this namespace, inside this local space here, right? So I've declared it up here, but I'm using it in here. And this is typically what we see in JavaScript, and especially with gaming, right? So I go in here and I say canvas is equal to document dot get element by ID, and then we point to canvas. Okay, there it is. Cool. And then same thing with stage. Stage, right? Now we're going to use the new keyword because I need to create a new stage container object, right? So whenever I make a new object in any language, typically I use a new keyword. Let's do that. So stage is equal to new create.js dot stage, capital S. And if I open brackets, it's going to give me a model for what I need. Look what it's asking for. A canvas element, a string or an object, right? Well, what am I going to pass in? Canvas. Cool. Right? Those two things I need for sure. I have my container, my stage, and everything else. Now, when I have those two items, right, I need a couple of extra things. I need some way of creating a frame rate calculator, right? And there's a static method or class that we use in Create.js called ticker, right? So let's access that class. Whenever we use a static class, what is a static class? Anyone? Who remembers what's a static class? What's the difference between a static class and a regular class? Okay, but what's another thing? What's another way to say static class? Sean, tell me what's a static class. I love it. I don't instantiate objects, right? I can use the methods in that class. I can use it as a container, right, if I want to, but I don't need to instantiate an object. That's good. So I can do one of these. Create.js, I can type dot ticker, right, ticker dot set FPS, frame rate, to 60 frames per second. So what this is doing is set the frame rate. Okay, so this is what FPS is. FPS is frames per second, excuse me, frames per second. So I'm using my ticker class, my static ticker class to set the frame rate for my entire game so that it refreshes 60 frames per second. I can modify this number. Please, whatever you do when we make our games, do not modify this number to speed up your game or slow it down, okay? Never. That would be bad. That's like saying, you know what? I want to make my game more difficult, so I'm just going to increase the frame rate, right? That's really poor. I mean, it's like all of a sudden now you're moving twice as fast and your creatures are coming at you twice as fast and it's really bad. And by the way, most devices, especially online, will not handle things very well past 60 frames per second. Even 60 frames is going to be really pushing it on an average website, okay? So please don't do that, right? Keep it at 60 or lower. 30 is what we used to have it at, by the way. 30 is a little slow nowadays. 60 is where we're at. And then we do 60 frames per second for game frameworks like Unity as well, right? So if you're a Unity person, taking game programming 1 with me, 60 frames per second. Here, 60 frames per second, okay? All right, cool, that's the first thing. Now I need to make an event handler, right? I want to make an event handler. And how do I do an event handler in JavaScript? Anyone remember how to do that? Well, there's 2 methods, right? The new method is .on, right? So on whatever. And the old method is add event listener, right? So you go, whatever the object is, add event listener. You add an event listener to the object, right? And you need a callback function to handle the event. You have an event listener, throw the ball. Remember we did this? Sean catch the ball. Sean catch the ball, okay. And then he's going to handle the event, right? Sean's going to handle the event. He's going to run with the ball. Sean run with the ball. Go, right? So Sean's going to, he's not going to run. Sean's going to get up and run. So we have an event handler, and I toss you the ball in the back. What's your name? Sean, cool. Sean, catch the ball. Catch the ball, buddy. Right now he's going to take that ball and run. So I'm the event. I'm the listener. I'm casting the event, right? And Sean, you guys are my handlers, right? So I need to do that now. So I need to do the same thing with my static class. I got to go in here and go create.js.ticker.on. And in brackets, you're going to see that I want to create an event for the tick. It's going to be a tick event. Every tick. What's a tick? Every frame, right? I want it to do something, right? So here's my tick event. I can do this two ways. I can create an anonymous function that I put in this space, or I can pass into it a named function. For us, let's pass in a named function. Otherwise, the code is going to get really funky looking. Still going to work, but let's pass a named function. We're going to call this function game loop. We don't have this right now. We're going to pass this game loop function in here. Right, here it is. I'm going to give you an error like this because there is no game loop, right? Let's make it. So we're going to go in here. We're going to function game loop, right? And it's going to return void, of course, right? But it's an event function, right? It's an event handler, which means whether you put it in here or not, I actually have an event variable, an event target, right? So I could put in here, and this is what I want you to put in here, event, oops, if I can spell, all right, which is of type createjs.event. All right, what this does is if I really want to, I can actually access this event parameter and look at the target of my events. Keep this like this. You're going to see me do this form all over and over again. I'm probably not going to use this item right now, this object, the event object. I'm probably not going to use it. I'll put it in here just for safekeeping. What do I want to do in this event? I want to do a stage update. I have a stage object, right? So here's my stage. And if I could do a dot update, it gives you that, it's a closed method like this. So what does update do for my stage? It refreshes it. What does refreshing mean? I re-render everything on my stage. I redraw my stage every frame. So 60 frames per second, I'm redrawing my stage over and over again, right? So if I want to do an animation, where am I going to do it? Game loop. I do my animation in game loop. I do my changes. I move my stuff around. And then the stage redraws itself. Okay, that's how it works. So here's my game loop. And this is my event handler, which means an event handler is going to function in its own process. It's a separate process that runs outside of the main process. We're running two processes now, right? Every time I kick off an event handler, I get another event, another process that I get from my pool. I want to think about this, okay? I got a thread. Think about a thread, okay? I got this big thread pool, right? Right now I have the main thread, right? So we're talking about concurrency now for a second, right? Who remembers concurrency from Java? We did concurrency in Java, yeah. I know some people are like nodding their head. Selena's like, please stop now. You're blowing my brains, right? So it's true. We have a thread pool, right? And my main thread is my main process that I'm running with, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the thread pool every time I create an event listener and get another thread from a thread pool. If I have a lot of event listeners, what's happening? I'm actually slowing down my code, right? So please be careful. Don't keep doing add event listener, or the shortcut .on in create.js is exactly just add event listener. The advantage of adding .on as opposed to add event listener is I can also pass in a reference to this, right? What's this keyword referred to in this context? Init, right? So I'm passing a reference to init into my game loop. Now, I don't need it right now, but I want you to keep that in mind. Whenever I do the on, it's a little bit more advanced than the add event listener because it bubbles up and it maintains, I can pass in a context, this context into it, right? Which is kind of cool. Okay, cool. I've got this. I need to have some kind of main function to run now that I do all my work in. I could do it in my init function, but that's really messy. Let's call this another method called main. Right, here's my main method. I don't have a main method, right? What do I got to do? Create it. So go down here. Function, right? Main. You can call it, by the way, whatever you want. Game, main, whatever you want, right? And in my game method, or my main method over here, I want to do something with my loop, right? Well, I remember what I have. I want to create a label. I've got a couple of them over here. I'm not going to use the ones I made. We're going to do this. We're going to do all that by hand, right? I have them here for your reference. I'm not going to use them right now. What I want to do instead is inside my main, I want to create a new text object, right? But I want to rotate it. And if I want to rotate it, I got to put it in my game loop, which means I got to have access to it on the global namespace at this point. All right, so it means up here, these are my global variables. Keep in mind this stuff, right? I'm gonna add it to the stage, right? So I need to have a variable that I declare, which is, I don't know, some kind of hello label. Let's make a hello label. Yay, hello label. All right, and my hello label in this namespace is going to be of type createjs.text. Okay, createjs has a text object that we can add to the environment, right? Okay, cool. So here's my text object. Let's do that. So let's add it in. So now that I have access to my hello label, I have access to it throughout my code. It's the global namespace, right? So here in my main function, right? I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to do a console command. Let's do that first. Console.log, and I'll say, you know, game started. If I'm down to this point, everything is good. My game has started if I got to that point. That means my loop is running. I've got my game loop going. I've got my ticker configured. I got everything, and my game has started, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a text object, right? So let's do that. So I want to say hello label. See how it detects it once I've defined it. Hello label dot, right? Is equal to mu createjs dot text. I got to define it as a new object, right? Because I don't have it yet. And in brackets, it's going to ask me for what I want. Now, there's three things that the text object needs, and it tells you what it needs. It needs a text string. I need a font, and I need a color. Let's put all that stuff in, right? So we'll say my text is hello world, right? My font, and this is how you do this, is let's say 60 pixels, Consolus. I'm going to call it the Consolus font. You can use whatever font you like. That's a system font for you. And then my color in hexadecimal, right? So what would that be? Pound, I want to make it black. 000000, right? That's all I need. That's the stuff I need to make my text. It's there, but it's not going to show up because I need to add it to the stage as a child. So people who are doing things like advanced graphics, hello advanced graphics girl, right? You're going to see that I'm going to use the add child method like I would use the add method with 3JS. So if you're taking 3JS, I would do like a scene.add. Here, I'm going to do a stage.addChild. Same thing. Let's try this out. So I'm going to say stage.addChild. Notice it comes up. And I'm going to put in brackets the child that I'm going to attach to my stage as a child of the stage, right? Hello label. So what am I really doing here, right? I'm saying take my hello label object and add it into my display list. My stage actually is an array of objects, right? And I want to pass it in as an object into that array. I'm actually pushing it into my stage as an object in the array in order. That means every time I load a new object into my stage, it layers in order. If I want the back layer to be my background, it's got to be in there first, and everything else on top of it. Otherwise, my background is going to be covering everything else. So I always put my background in first. Now I don't have a background. I'll leave it white, but I'm adding my label. Here's another thing, another funky thing here. I'm going to predict what's going to happen, all right? What is my pivot point by default of all objects in Create.js? What do you think what do you think the pivot point is, or the focal point, or the registration mark? Sorry? It's 0, 0. But what's 0, 0 for the local space? First of all, what's 0, 0 on my stage? Where's 0, 0? Top left. Always in computers, pretty much, unless you have some weird grid, it's top left corner, right? So too is for every object local coordinate space, right? So 0, 0 for my object, my hello label object, is the top left corner. That's the registration mark. Knowing that, where is it going to show up by default, right, in my stage? If I don't specify, where is it going to show up? Top left corner. So that's where it should go. Right? Let's see if it works. So I need to transpile. That's the first thing to do. So I transpile my code. Remember that it shows 8 errors, by the way. Let's see those errors. It says cannot find the start button, cannot find the scene, cannot find any of that stuff. And of course it's not going to find this stuff, but I haven't added it in, right? Well, yeah, I kind of have, right? But don't worry about it. It's all down here. It's still going to transpile. It's still going to work. what I'm looking for is what the final version is going to be. If I look at the JS file now, it just look like this, right? And this is all coded out anyway. So this is good. So it transpiled nicely for me, right? It almost looks identical actually, right? There's no changes in this case. In fact, you can take the code I put in minus all the typings, and you still have great JS in JavaScript. Okay. Let's go back to the TS file. So we're good here. Let's test it, right? Let's test it live, because this is a file that we've been working with live. So what do I need to do to test it live? I need to update my GitHub. So let's do that. So I'm going to go to GitHub here. Now I'm going to do this inside the Visual Studio Code. You could certainly do the same thing on the command line. In VS Code, I go to changes, I skip across to here, and I click on this plus, and I stage everything. And then what I do is I make a commit message. So I go in here and I say updated game.ts, updated game.ts, right? And then I'm going to click the check mark. Cool. And now I'm going to go to my ellipses, and if I've configured everything so I'm in sync with my remote, I have a push option, but only if I put in that git remote add. If I don't put that in there, my sync option doesn't work. So let's click push. So it's going to push everything up online the way it is. If I haven't made any mistakes, if I go to Visual Studio, if I go to Azure website, so if I go to COMP, right, 397, you know, up here, I'm going to see a hello world in the top left corner. Okay. That's cool. I want this to be in the middle before we leave for the day. How do I put it in the middle? What do I do? I could calculate how wide it is, but that's a really ugly thing to do. There are some functions that are built into EaselJS, right? And I'll show them to you instead of you having to read them. Let's go. So before I add it to the stage, I could do a couple things here. One, I want to change my registration mark. So instead of it being in the top left corner of my actual object, it's in the middle of my object. How do I do that? Well, I need to kind of determine a couple things. So I'm going to do hello label, right? And we want to kind of put the regx value, so the x-axis, the registration mark on the x-axis, I'm moving it over, right? It's going to be equal to, right, my hello label dot get. And notice I have get measured height, get measured width, all these other things. If I do, because I'm using text, I can use get measured. It's the x, right? Get measured width. So let's try that out. Get measured width. And if you notice, it's a number that I'm going to get measured width, right? And we're going to multiply that by 0.5. Why? I'm getting half the width of my entire line, whatever it is, and that's where my registration mark is going to be for the x. I'm going to do the same thing for y, right? So hello label dot reg y, the registration mark on the y-axis, up and down now, and I'm going to say is equal to hello label dot get measured height, right? Multiplied by 0.5, right? Okay, so cool. So I've done that, right? So now if we run it, let's just run it the way it is. It's still not moved anywhere, right? It's still not moved anywhere, but it's going to be the middle of the label should be kind of part of my label should be off screen. Let's see this if this is true. So I'm going to go here, add this to changes, and I'll do a added registration mark, or changed registration point. Change registration point of hello label. That's what I did. So you can see what I did here. I'm going to do the checkbox. I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go push. And then after it's done pushing, I'm going to go back up here and I refresh. When I do this properly, and if it does it on time, it's not done it yet. Oh, what did I not do? What did I not do? Transpile. Darn, that's bad. So do that thing. Forgot to transpile is what I'm putting here now. All right, so there it is. There's my two changes, my transpile, my JS, and my JS map. I'm going to say, go to changes, add those to the staging area, and say transpiled game.ts, right? Do that, go here, and push. And that's an unfortunate thing for VS Code. Visual Studio, as soon as you save, you automatically transpile. So you never have to worry about this. As soon as you save your code, you're transpiling. You're transpiling over and over again with Visual Studio. Okay, I'm not worrying about the errors right now because I've commented everything out. I want to go back and I want to check out the online, what it looks like. And if what I expect is this to be in the middle somewhere, yeah, like that. That's how it should be. That's the middle of my registration mark. So I want to take this and put it here, right? So what's the middle of my screen? If I know my screen is 640 by 480, then what's the middle? 320 by 240, right? So that's my X and Y. Let's put that in. So I can go in here and say hello label dot X is equal to 320. Hello label dot Y is equal to 480. And now we're going to be directly in the middle, yeah? So I've saved it. I'm going to transpile. Ooh. And then, right? When I'm done transpiling, I'm going to go here and I'm going to add all those in. And I'm going to go here. I'm going to say moved hello label to center screen. By the way, there's ways of doing it without putting the direct numbers. You can calculate the width of your screen. And we'll talk about that another day. For me, I just put in some straight values. I'm pushing it. And my last trick, once this is done, I want to spin it around on its axis, right? Okay, so let's try this out like I said I was going to do. First, let's refresh. Should be in the middle. Oh, what happened? I did 480, didn't I? Okay, I'll fix that. So, sorry, I meant to do 240. But that almost worked, right? But let's spin it around. I'm not gonna do another push here for a second. I would spin it here. I would do my rotation here, and I want to rotate it 5 degrees every frame. 5 degrees every frame. It's going to keep rotating. So I do this. Hello label. That's where I put it in my game loop, because in my game loop refreshes the screen, or it keeps running 60 frames every second, every tick. It keeps running this game loop forever, right? So hello label dot rotation, right? Right? And I want to rotate how, right? Dot, can I do a dot X? No. I'm just going to rotate across the pivot. That's what I'm rotating around, right? Wherever the pivot is, plus equals to 5 degrees. So I'm adding 5 degrees to the rotation number. Remember, there's 3 values: rotation, location, and scale for all game objects, no matter what you're doing, right? Even here at Great.js. So my rotation across my pivot is I'm going to rotate across that 5 degrees every frame. Let's try that out. So I'm going to go here, add this in, and then I'll say, did I transpile? No, I didn't. Let's try that out. I'm not adding a change yet until I transpile. Yay, there it is. Put those 2 things too. And I'll add that into my commit. I'll say rotating hello label. There we go. And then do this, come here, go push. And once I've got that, I should have, if I've done everything right, in the direct middle of my screen, my whole hello label will rotate to the right 5 degrees every frame. Let's try this out. And I'm going to here and refresh. It's not quite in the middle. You notice there's a bit of a wobble? Notice that's a bit of a wobble? It's a bit of a wobble because it's trying to calculate my measured width and my measured height. And that's bad. We can fix that, but it won't be today, right? So there's your intro into Create.js. Next week, we're going to get right into building our state machine from scratch. Please use the file that I just gave you as a template, right, to build your assignment number 1. Okay, start with that one. Okay, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you very much.